folks. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a overview today in our Thinking About Thinking series and what the digital attention token economy might mean for that. And I offer this in from a place of acknowledging my role in the attention economy. I'm not monetizing my attention, but clearly probably, Google, YouTube is getting something out of it. I'm sure they run some ads at the beginning or what have you. So there are different levels of franchising one's thought process. And I do think I've still stayed here on YouTube because this was my starting point, and I really didn't want to join into the token engineering digital media platforms because I understood what that was. Energetically, I didn't want people necessarily energetically bound with tokens, although there is probably likely some sort of energetic bonding with just by you being here and watching me. So I acknowledge all of this. I am not saying I am outside of the situation. I am merely being a curious observer. And so I just wanted to take a few minutes this morning to feature, I don't get a ton of comments on my blog. This person, Stu, commented yesterday evening on the blog that I posted, essentially sort of deconstructing that, the freemium 5-minute clip that Catherine Austin put out with John Titus, sort of their weekly financial report that touched on energy consumption in Anglo-American intelligence data centers and Bitcoin being hijacked by the billionaires, although it could possibly be a good payment processing system if it hadn't been hijacked. And then the way in which the states and federal government were establishing Bitcoin reserves that they hypothesized would be linked to land and mineral assets, material assets in the United States as a way of bailing out the Bitcoin billionaires. Now, so I kind of, I expanded this conversation, and the way I have been approaching it lately is the idea of reality tunnels. And so this comment sort of presumes judgment. And what I would say is the mind control, the behavioral psychic control of the interwebs during the lockdowns created spaces for influencers of varying levels of power and influence to come online and then pull people into certain reality tunnels. And some of the reality tunnels were maybe attached underground to other reality tunnels, but they were very, very powerful constructs because they offered people a community. And in the last video, I talked a little bit about the idea of scaffolding, and that those reality tunnels built sort of a reality scaffold that made people comfortable with ways of looking at things. And then gradually over time, the deplatforming allowed for the tokens to be built in within these alternate platform systems, the Odysseys and the libraries and that sort of thing. And then that got baked into the token economy. And how people engaged with digital content was a signal. And clearly all of that signal was being monitored and routed in terms of memetics and narrative flows. And yes, I do agree that there is an actual intelligence community, and that community was for sure watching all of the signal flows and possibly helping manage those flows to a certain respect, and intelligence communities in tandem with the technology companies. So all of that is true and out there, and yet I still keep showing up. I'm not sure why, trying to sort of add my 2 cents into the mix. So in this last video, I talked a lot about scaffolding and ladders, and that people were having a hard time understanding me because I didn't offer a really robust scaffold for people. A lot of mine is still in my head, and people were more comfortable in other reality tunnels. And so if you want to put that as a judgment, you can put that as a judgment. I'm simply saying that is how it is. That is how the system works from my viewpoint. It doesn't make people in other reality tunnels necessarily bad unless you're in that reality tunnel and then somehow you get new information and you don't find it that fulfilling anymore, and then you go and you move out. But it doesn't make them bad. It's just good for the people who like to live in that reality tunnel. So this comment from Stu, I just wanted to use as an example of, in my opinion, the influence of how these digital platforms are shaping our thinking and literally programming us. And again, you could say, I'm trying to program you. I'm not necessarily trying to program you on my side. I'm simply trying to offer my perspective in the room, which could be also considered a program. All right. So all intents and purposes, I'm not saying like I'm better or outside or more pure than anyone else. I'm simply trying to use my metacognition to think about our thinking. Okay, so here's Stu from last night, my comment on the Catherine Austin Fitts report with John Titus, where he does that strange Smokey and the Bandit 2 oming meditation for his heart field. All right. So here's Stu says, Allison, I subscribe to Solari and periodically read and listen to your work. I have enjoyed your move to Arkansas and enjoyed your visit in New York State. Okay, so this person is a subscriber. And so that is a certain level of commitment, right? And again, the Solari model is not a freemium model. It's we'll provide some teasers out front, and then we'll do our real content for our paid people behind the scenes, right? But that also gives them cover for people like me who aren't subscribers to say, well, you only listen to the free part. Us subscribers got the full thing, and it's not at all what you say, right? So that's kind of a convenient model for Catherine, like, good strategy on you on that one, right? And so again, once you subscribe, you have a commitment, right? And even like when you subscribe to my channel on YouTube, even though you probably don't get the notifications, there's a certain level of a commitment. So that pulls you into the reality tunnel. But then the question is, how deep do you go and how willing are you to like extend beyond and explore other reality tunnels, right? And so this person identifies as a subscriber who occasionally listens to my work and like things like me moving to Arkansas, which is, again, me applying my lived experience to my thought process, but not necessarily my most heavy-hitting research. And so I would say that just as I went over to Catherine Austin Fitts' clip because somebody inboxed it to me, and I put my ladder up and I looked around and I had some things to say about what I saw there, Stu essentially is one of the people who's in the Solari reality tunnel, but he occasionally takes a ladder up and looks over the wall at what I'm doing over there, right? But again, if you're looking at my move to Arkansas, you're not actually saying, he could have said, I appreciate your perspective on spatial computing and token engineering, right? Like that's what I'm really, in consciousness, that's what I'm trying to get at. But if what you wanted, if you're looking for like a feature, a puff piece or something about me and my garden, then if you're coming over here for that, then that's very different than me saying, I have a problem with Goldman Sachs securitizing toddlers on blockchain, you know, like it's a totally different thing. So it's interesting framing to begin with. And then Stu says, I think your characterization of Catherine Austin Fitts' view of Bitcoin is, well, based on a 5-minute clip. Okay, so that's fair enough, right? So Catherine gives her subscribers more information, right? And that also validates them because they feel like they're on the inside track, right? And they have something other people don't have. Now, my position has always been, I share everything I know, which is probably way more than most people want to hear, because I think everybody deserves to have the information and sort it out as you wish, right? I haven't paywalled because I haven't had to, because I'm living this cushy life in a 2-bedroom 70s rancher in Hot Springs, Arkansas, right? I haven't had to do that yet. And it's different. Like once you have a paywall, it's a different thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's a different thing, right? And it sets up this, but you can't actually know because only our insiders would actually know, right? But what I can do is I can put up a ladder and I can make some very specific observations on the content of what was shared publicly. And Catherine Austin Fitts is no dummy, right? She's trained at the highest level of Ivy League institutions, right? She knows strategy. And so she's putting choice bits out for whatever reasons, whether it's to draw in people, whether it's to provide cover for things. But within this, she literally said that Bitcoin was hijacked by the billionaire class, but that it had good options as a payment processing system. Now, Stu, you can't actually say that that's not the case because that's what she said. That's what she said this week. So again, we may change our viewpoints over time. which is probably a good thing. We get new information and we change our viewpoint. So in the past, maybe she described it differently, but this week in a current clip, she said it was hijacked by billionaires, but it could be a good payment processing system if widely adopted. Okay, that's important because that is essentially saying that you could run society on blockchain if you did it for the right reasons and it wasn't run by the billionaire class. And this is everything I've been talking about with community currency, okay? So yes, it was a 5-minute clip and I made a specific observation and then I offered an invitation to her subscribers to say, why don't you ask her about this? And when one of them asked, who was no longer a subscriber because she doesn't talk about these things on Twitter, essentially she said she's busy doing other things, which, is her right. She's busy doing other things. She's busy with cash, right? But she is also supposedly a financial advisor, and any financial advisor worth their salt realizes the new economy is fintech and emerging technologies, and you would be looking at Andreessen Horowitz's portfolio of 1,600 different companies, and maybe you would realize they're not all running on cash, and there's other things to talk about. But it's certainly Catherine Austin Fitz's thing to just limit her conversation to, like, I'm working on cash, just like I limit my conversations too. So I'm fair about that. She has always seen, Bitcoin as a cyber system of control and surveillance. Okay. So that's actually not true because that's not what the clip said. The clip said it got hijacked and it could be good. So Stu is conveniently forgetting, and I included the clip in my discussion. So either Stu didn't watch the clip and how I talked about it, or it literally just bounced off, ba-boom, ba-boom, because Stu and all the others like Stu who are subscribers to the Solari report are in a very deep reality tunnel with the free energy principle and what happens when you're confronted with information that is inconsistent with your reality model. It bounces off, right? So I can pull up Catherine telling John, that thing got hijacked, but it could be really good. And it's like it never happened to Stu because Stu couldn't process it because Stu knows the story that it is a cyber system of control and surveillance, right? And then we keep having these conversations about what is control, what is totalitarianism, what is surveillance. You could talk about it with those words, which I feel were probably kind of, they're offered up in certain reality tunnels as a way of thinking about it. But you could also think of it as a game board and a fitness landscape and part of evolutionary economics, right? And so those are equally relevant ways to talk about cyber-physical systems run on token economics. And that's how I talk about it. But she's talking about it, and she needs to, in my opinion, talk about it as a control and surveillance system, because behind the back door, the Trust the Plan Bobby, whose Vantage Point Capital Partners company was investing in all of the kinds of companies that Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z, is investing in, that Catherine's not talking about because she's busy talking about cash, they know what's coming, right? And so they're going to come up with a narrative to offer you the control. No, those Bitcoin billionaires aren't going to control it. They're going to give you some UBI out of their giving pledge, and then you get to make the choices. Because in my opinion, what's really compelling about the system is the choice architecture on a game board that, yes, has parameters set. So you could say that that's a cyber system of control, but is it a cyber system of control to make you a zombie puppet? Or is it a cyber system of control to make you a live action role play hero, right? And what is the surveillance being used for? Is it being used to put you in jail? Or is it being used to evolve you into a human potential movement, psychic remote viewing astral projection diviner? There are many different stories that can be told, right? There are many different stories. And what I'm saying is like, boop, pull the lid off of your own freaking curiosity, Stu. Don't, like, at this point, it's like Allison said, Catherine Austin Fitz said, well, what do you think, Stu? And that's what I'm, and I'm not trying to just hang Stu out to dry because, he had the balls to, write a comment. So good on you for engaging because, damn, there's really not a lot of engagement on this post. But what do you think I sit here all day and tell you what I think, and I hold in abeyance that a lot of what I think may not come to pass, or it might not be the best analysis, but I'm seeing patterns and I'm telling you what I think, and then you can tell me what you think. And so sometimes people actually share with me information that's useful. Somebody yesterday just sent me a clip, an hour-long interview with Matt Kaiser talking about Bitcoin as spiritual technology, right? And I'm going to post some clips on that. But that is that is an example of someone listening to me and exploring my scaffold and then helping me build. They're like, here's a poll, right? Here's a poll, and then I can use it. I'm like, oh, and so maybe they wouldn't see that clip exactly the way I see it because I have these mind maps going back that I can plug it into in a way that maybe they can't, but they use their own intuitive thinking to say, that thing that Allison's been talking about for a while seems to relate to this. Not, I'm trying to derail Allison's thinking by sending her some bogus Bitcoin Federal Reserve thing that Catherine Austin Fitts said, even though she's been talking about blockchain and Bitcoin for years. It's actually in my line of thinking and in my reality tunnel. And so again, we can say we're each entitled to our reality tunnels. We don't have to say, we won't know till the end who is the most accurate. And it's probably and. It's probably some version of a lot of them intersecting. But if you want to talk about Bitcoin as a cyber system of control and surveillance, that is a particular story that goes to a particular place that shuts the door, bang, 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 on gamified fitness landscapes in the network state, and Game B, and Jim Rutt, and all of these other things that are fascinating things to explore. But if you're in the box canyon of the Solari report, maybe that's what you can handle because that's your bandwidth, and that's okay. But some of us out here are exploring the other stories. Okay. You commented something to the effect of, I really don't know what the intelligence community is, but surely it is part of a collective cyber consciousness or something like that. So, and then he goes on to say, your whole video seems to be saying, she doesn't say enough about how I would characterize the growth of cybermind, so really she isn't saying the right things. It seems a lot of words about a fairly small point. Okay, so Stu is in the defensive position, right? He is on the inside of the moat, in the village of the Solari report. And so he's looking through, I said a lot of interesting shit in that 5 minute, over on that 5 minute clip. He didn't hear anything I had to say because he's not on my scaffold. He just pops up a ladder and he's like, oh, they're saying something bad about people in my reality tunnel. And I'm going to say, you're inaccurate, right? And I'm not going to actually hear anything that you have to say or engage with your content because what you're saying is it's all in opposition to Catherine Austin Fitts. And yeah, Catherine Austin Fitts can have her tunnel. I have my tunnel, right? Why don't you come over here and ask me about my tunnel, right? But all it is, and this is what these social media feeds train people to do, is join a team and defend it. Join a team and defend it. I'm not asking y'all to be on my team. I'm not asking for defense. I'm asking for thinking colleagues to think alongside me, and that we can pass the ball occasionally and compare puzzle pieces occasionally and imagine what the box is of the puzzle occasionally. But I don't need a team because I'm actually a pretty independent operator. So I don't talk about it as collective cyber consciousness, but what I am talking a lot about is interdimensional biofilms and information technology and quantum computing. This is what I talk about. And I don't even really talk about it as a mind. I've said before, I don't think the global brain is actually the best metaphor. I used that for a while, but I think the fascia, and you can overlay it with a Gaia fascia if you want to, or a noetic fascia. The fascia is the decentralization piece. And so that's by far more interesting. So the intelligence, it might look like plasma. It might look like a biofilm. It might look like ether. It's this thing that we are in that as I'm looking at, I've got here Henry Corbin, the man of life in Iranian Sufism. They're working with light. And then Peter Kingsley, Cata Falk on Jung, and his working in the underworld and other spaces and divination. There is something going on in terms of a level of intelligence that we are not trained to understand because guess what? They have you in the reality tunnel where you're just looking for the next surveillance camera. And you're so afraid and that you don't know where to put your money, and Catherine's going to tell you where to put your money and keep you afraid. So you don't see the intelligence. But these people, going back to classical antiquity, have been working with the intelligence of the cosmos. And now and there have been people, and this is these esoteric schools for shamanic school. It's coming out into the open now. So do you want to try to figure out those tools of working with the intelligence, or do you want to sit and be a little fraidy cat of the Anglo-American Alliance and the Bitcoin billionaires who are going to put you in your place and take all your money and tell you that you can't buy potato chips? Because as far as I can tell, that's mostly what a lot of people have on offer, because guess what? People like to be afraid. They do. They like to be afraid. It's very mesmerizing. People get in a fear loop and they literally can't get out. And so what I'm saying is, yes, intelligence is something else than what they're talking about. And if what you need to fall back on is like, no, it's only the NSA and the CIA and the FBI and MI6 and blah, 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 okay, move along. You don't need to be here. Take down your ladder, put it in your pocket, go back in the boat. That's fine. I mean, I'm not making any bank off anybody, right? So if that's where you're comfortable, go there, Stu. But what I'm saying is there's more than that. The framing isn't tell me more about this intelligence thing you speak of. Where are you getting this? How are you thinking about it? It's, you're just mad at Catherine because she's, how do they say? She really isn't saying the right things. Now, clearly, Stu hasn't been listening lately because I'm not judging. It's not right or wrong. It's what is your reality model. And I'm not necessarily saying that my reality model is any better or more effective than anybody else's. It's simply mine. And I'm inviting Stu and everybody else to come up with your own model and pick and choose if you are nimble enough to go in and out of the reality tunnels without getting sucked in and paying them $5 a month or $12 a month or whatever to have your consciousness managed and to have them give you a bedtime story. Because you could say I'm giving you a bedtime story over here, and I am, but I'm also kind of kicking you in the butt to say, get out of here, right? Look around, pick some stuff up, go over there and look. Because I'd far more likely, I'm still really focused on my work, but if there's stuff that really upends what I'm looking at, there's something that gives me a totally new lens, a new tool, bring it. I would love to keep changing because I've shown that I can. I don't talk about a collective cyber consciousness. I talk about the psychic and computer. And I talk about information technology and token engineering and manifestation and interdimensionality. And I know that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And I didn't necessarily want to go here because I was really off-put, honestly, by the whole influencer space of this over-the-top esoteric dark arts kind of BS content that people have been following for decades and decades. It wasn't appealing to me at all. And I didn't really see what I could have to add to it, right? But as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't feel like people are talking so much about mystical Sufism or some of the Pythagoreanism. This is the stuff that interests me applied to the Web3 token engineering and Andreessen Horowitz, right? And not to sit down and be afraid of it, but to say, what they're looking at and how they're looking at it? How does this apply to me having a better understanding of myself and my own consciousness? Okay, so it may seem like a fairly lot of words it seems like a lot of words about a fairly small point. And I would say in that, Stu, you're actually totally wrong. I can say that. It is not a fairly small point. Catherine Austin Fitts and John Titus in the Solari report are in a fundamentally and foundationally different reality model than I am operating out of. It's not a small point. It's structurally radically different. What they're working in is material reality. They're working in finance and money and materialism. And where I've moved I've moved beyond this. I started there, but now I've moved into consciousness and quantum entanglement and how that relates to token engineering and broader sections of a more ephemeral intelligence of the universe. Two totally different things, and it's not a small point. It's not a small point. It's a very big difference. And so if what you're doing is putting up your ladder and you've got your sword and your shield and you're going to defend your box canyon, you can do that. Most people do that, right? But what I'm saying is you actually are missing out on a huge opportunity to explore new spaces, right? And if you put down the isn't saying the right things thing, and you can just say, hey, there's 2 parallel reality tunnels. There's infinite reality tunnels. You too, Stu, could build your own reality tunnel, and you could sample from a lot of different ones and make something that's better than all of them. You could do it. But most people, and this is what I say about the participatory universe, would rather be consumers, largely of fear porn, than go to the trouble of making their own mind palaces, putting together their own ideas, thinking about it from a different perspective, and telling their own story. Because they'd rather be under the umbrella of a team of a big influencer, and that's, I'm sure that there's some evolutionary imperative. that's why that works. But I am later today, I'm going to finish doing this talk on Max Kaiser talking about Bitcoin as spiritual technology is quite fascinating and is totally in alignment with the Templeton Foundation and their spiritual capital, and that Ian Grigg, the monochrome guy, talking about the Templeton article on the Templeton Foundation, money will teach you how to pray, and linking back to these ancient mystical divination practices. And that's what I'm interested in. But yeah, Stu doesn't have to be interested in that. Doesn't make him a bad person. I don't know if Stu is him. Doesn't make Stu a bad person to not just want to poo-poo what I have to offer. That's fine. It's not for everybody. It's actually for a pretty small group of people. Not that we're trying to be elitist, but it actually takes work, which is something most people aren't up for. So again, thinking about thinking. This is what social media did. It created the reality tunnel models. Some of them were overlapping. Some of them had sort of force fields around them of like spheres of influence. It invited people in. And then gradually it upgraded their payment commitment in a lot of respects, whether it was just a token or what have you. And then once you were that invested, you were going to darn well defend it. You were going to defend your corner of the game board. And I can see that. And I'm not saying I'm out of it. I'm not monetizing my content, but there's surely an energetic element of people who tune in regularly to watch what I have to say. So and someday I might just put all this down and not do this anymore, but I still have things I'm thinking about that I think are worthwhile to share with people. So yeah, think about your thinking, and think about opportunities that you're missing by not asking good questions. Because Stu had the possibility of, instead of going in and saying, I mischaracterized Catherine Austin Fitz's take on Bitcoin, to actually ask me about what I'm talking about. Because if Stu didn't understand what I was talking about with that the Bitcoin billionaires, the flip side to that is a participatory community currency, the kind that Sepp Kamvar of MIT and Charles Eisenstein, the kind that would have sensors in little children's slippers and track them around the room with AI cameras to generate intelligent pattern recognition. She's not going to tell you that. I could tell you that, and then you could decide where you were. But most people, again, free energy principle, super helpful. You have a world model, and when you get information in, like Catherine saying, Bitcoin could be a good payment processing system if it hadn't been hijacked by the billionaires, boing, it bounces off. It's like it never happened. And that's why we never got traction, because these reality tunnels, I think, were framed out well in advance, and they herded people right in. And, people enjoy living in their fear port in there. So, who am I to yuck your yum if that's what you're into? So, anyway, I've planted all of my spring bulbs yesterday, And except for the Grecian windflower, which have to soak for like 6 hours before you plant them. They look like little turds or dried raisins or something. So hopefully those will work out. And I'm glad I'm feeling better. I had kind of a headache yesterday, but I'm bouncing back. And so I'm winterizing the house, and I've got like a few more wheelbarrows of sod to deal with, and then mostly this season's yard project is done. So thanks for tuning in, and Stu, hang in there. Thanks for writing. I found this to be a useful deconstruction, and most of us don't think about how we think, but I can tell you that the system that is running the large-scale socio-technical behavioral psychology flow state chart does think about how you think. So it's good to give a pause and actually spend some time in that space. Okay, bye.